All right. In the meantime, stocks, though, are pairing their losses on the president's earlier remarks. Remember, they were sort of digesting the significance of the trade in your face approach the president took yesterday. He doubled down on that with a tweet this morning. Trade wars are good and easy to win. Some people have different views on that subject. Let's get the read with former New York Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCaughey, National Taxpayers Union Free Trade Initiative Director Bryan Riley. Betsy, to that point, the trade wars are easy to win, are they?
Well, in this case, the president's real concern is not just with trade wars, it's with real wars. And if anybody reads this report put out by the Commerce Department last month, you will be convinced that these tariffs are necessary, because this report shows that the American steel industry is on such a rapid decline that it could not ramp up for a major military emergency. It says right on page 49 that unlike World War II, where U.S. steel production had to increase 200% between 1938 and 1942, this time around, the U.S. will not be ready. And who is ready? China. China's steel production capacity is 12 times as great as the United States. They produce more steel in a month than we do in an entire year. In fact, their excess capacity is bigger than our entire capacity. So the U.S. steel industry has to be bolstered with these tariffs, not to make people on Wall Street rich. It's to make us prepared for a major military conflict.
All right, Bryan, I do know that the steel industry has, dating back to John Kennedy, maybe even sooner, gone to the White House either to complain or to ask for help, or to, in the case of John Kennedy, ease up on the badgering talk that they were raising prices at a bad time. And yet, president by president, year by year, decade by decade, their influence has lessened. Can a country change that with its policy by singling out countries like Canada, Brazil, South Korea, some of these others?
Well, I think the fundamental choice that President Trump is facing is, do I want to go down in history as the next Herbert Hoover or the next Ronald Reagan? And it's not a hard choice at all. We know what happens when you go down the path of trade wars. And by the way, the Defense Department has made it clear that we have plenty of steel, plenty of aluminum to supply our defense needs.
But Bryan, you mentioned Ronald Reagan. He responded to the Japanese dumping computer chips on our country in the 80s. So he wasn't above trade wars of his own, right?
Yeah, he spoke loud and clear about the need to avoid trade wars, to avoid a return to the Great Depression. Sure, he had some targeted measures, but he looked at creating NAFTA, he looked at creating the World Trade Organization.
So you think what President Trump is doing is setting us on the wrong course? What Betsy's saying might be a legitimate issue, but the wrong remedy.
It's undermining everything that he's trying to do to make America a better place to do business.
Betsy, what do you think of that? That he's undermining it?
That's just simply not true. The United States does have the commercial power to win these trade wars. We produce 24% of the goods and services produced in the entire world, but right now we are getting our clocks cleaned in so many areas of trade, not just steel. Take a look at pharmaceuticals. It's the same thing.
So looking at all of this, Bryan, I always play things out. We use the market as sort of a gauge, and you're quite right, both of you, to say let's not obsess too much on that. It's not as if markets are always right. But you can get an idea of the concern. These are largely free marketeers who, by the way, had no problem seeing their own heinies bailed out after the meltdown. So take that with a big grain of salt. But I do wonder what happens next. So let's say, Bryan, right now that the Canadians are already looking at responding, target some of our agricultural products, or in Europe, the European Union, also not pleased with this, decides to skip Boeing and go right to Airbus to order its next lot of planes. Then what?
There's always this chance for a tit-for-tat trade war. Nobody can predict the future, but I can guarantee you that putting a $9 to $10 billion a year tax on Americans is certainly not a good idea. And the Commerce Secretary earlier today, I think he must have seen the movie Office Space, the idea that we'll make everybody pay a little bit more for a can of soup and a car, and use that money to prop up the steel industry.
Yeah, I had no idea where he was going with that.
That's horrible economic policy.
Well, but the fact is, I'd like to make a prediction. And look, on the basis of Donald Trump's success in the past negotiating deals, I predict that some of these countries will come to the table and offer concessions before there's a trade war.
Well, that's what I think. I think that is the strategy here. I think that's what he's hoping, that they'll avoid this by doing something, either to expand a plant in the U.S. or something like that. By the way, one company, Sweden's Electrolux, has halted an investment in the U.S. until this issue is resolved. So from that, Bryan, I'd have to worry about whether we're going to see that anytime soon.
It's just another example of the government picking winners and losers through the political process. We should let the market rule. And look, if you look around the world, the countries that are most prosperous are those that have the most economic freedom and those that give people the freedom to choose how to spend their money. We don't want Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi or anybody else making those decisions for us.
I would support that as long as we're just talking about economics, but that's not what this report is about. We are talking about national defense, and it has always been the president's prerogative, moreover, his duty to ensure that our trade negotiations protect industries that are vital to national defense.
And if you cut off, Betsy, if we cut off the supply of steel and aluminum, we're driving up costs in the United States and we're hurting our national security. We're making us less secure, not more secure.
If I have to bring up this can of soup argument with you again, and you're going to have to stay here late for this, but both of you, I want to thank you very much for taking the time.